Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our, I think, 11th podcast this year. And today I am very happy to present Vince to you. And I met Vince, I think it's maybe been 2 months ago or 1.5 months ago.
I think so.
And because Vince is a very avid podcast host, and he shared with me that he also actually helps coaches with publishing their very first book. And I found it quite interesting. And I know we had quite a few conversations around book and book writing and such, but the take that Vince is taking is actually contributing chapters to a book. And that's one of the other ways of actually publishing some of your content, publishing some of your ideas, thoughts, your know-how. And so he will share more with you about that. But just to kind of like get started, Vince, again, welcome to our live cast. And those of you who are listening on Facebook or here with us on Zoom, drop your questions in the chat for Vince. But maybe just to kind of like get started, please share with us, how did you become a coach? How did you become a podcast host? And and what's your story with books and book writing and chapters and all that?
Wow, that's such a long story. Now, so becoming a coach is really fun, actually, because it was completely accidental. I've got a history in both kind of entrepreneurship and corporate. I've been in and out of both for most of my career. I just came off the back of selling one of my largest companies ever, which was a 3.5-year journey of extreme stress, extreme anxiety, but a really good payoff. It was a multi-8-figure exit after about 3.5 years. So that was really cool. Then I moved on to Cigna Insurance and became the chief marketing officer there. So that was a different chapter of my life for me. At Cigna, it was 5 years of, on paper, the dream job. Like the pay was ludicrous. They really do look after you. It's about as high as you can get as a marketer in the industry, and it was a very coveted job as well. I was getting the results there. I turned around their online sales from like basically nothing to about 50% of their revenue in the 5 years that I was there. In fact, basically doubled the revenue of the Fortune 100 company, which was usually unheard of. So that got me a lot of recognition. It got me the accolades. I got to travel the world, speaking on stages everywhere, which I do quite enjoy, I must admit, and do quite miss that part. And also it got me a number of awards, including getting recognized by Adobe as one of the top 50 marketers in the world. And that's when I published my first book. So I published my first book when I was there. So I'm sitting in this corner office. I just returned from a whole pile of trips, sitting in my corner office there. I had the second largest office in the company, on one of the highest floors of the building, highest building in New Zealand. And I'm sitting there looking out over the view, looking at my Mad Men style cabinet there with all my whiskey in, looking at this list of accolades. And I was completely, utterly miserable. I was so unhappy. And I felt really, really guilty and really ashamed about that as well, because most people wanted that job, but couldn't have it. And here I was having the job and I didn't want it. And that made me feel real bad. So I ended up making the easiest hard decision in my life. This was about December 2019. I remember talking to my CEO and saying, I think I need to move on. And my goal is to impact people. My goal is to find something that is fulfilling. And for me, that is being at the forefront of helping others. So I knew that there was a book I was working on that was going to impact a lot of people. I knew that when people read this and read my story, it would really impact them as well. So I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to become a full-time author. She thought I was having a breakdown. Literally, my CEO told me she was going to get me a counselor or get me a psychologist because she couldn't quite compute that I was leaving. And she goes, do you know how much we pay you? And I'm like, yes, it's not about the money. She goes, I don't understand. And I'm going, and that's part of why I'm leaving. So I left there January 2020. That was my last days at Cigna. Left there to focus on being that full-time author. Turns out when you have ADHD, writing a book full-time, one book full-time, is not good for your mental health. About 1 week into it, I thought I was going crazy. I walk around the house going, need something to do, need something to do. I was constantly distracted. So that started a different journey for me. It's where I ended up launching my podcast called Chasing the Insights, which has been one of the most fun things I've ever done. That's where I get to meet amazing people like Rena, get to talk to them about being on my podcast, on my show, and then making all these amazing friends around the world, which is amazing. It's also where I accidentally fell into coaching. And by that, I mean, when I launched the business and was going to be this full-time author, that was great. And I was speaking to all these entrepreneurs around the world. But of course, then a sort of certain global thing happened, which was the pandemic. And the moment that impacted, most of the people I'm talking to said the same thing, which was, look, we want to help you, Vince. We want to be able to contribute to your book. We want to be able to do all this. But the reality is we're falling apart. We have no revenue coming in. We've got all the same overheads. We don't even know if we're going to exist in 2 months' time. And when you have a soft spot for entrepreneurs, which I do, I love entrepreneurship. I think it's the backbone of our society, of our economy. And I just think it's a really special thing. So for me, it was really heartbreaking hearing that message. And I remember turning to my wife and she looked at me, and my wife's name's Leanne. She looked at me and she just goes, you can't let go, can you? And I went, nah. And she goes, you're going to have to help, aren't you? I went, yeah. So I asked if I could come alongside all these entrepreneurs. They all said yes, fortunately, which was awesome. But then managed to get the success for them very, very quickly, and turn around their businesses, in some case pivoting, in some case just understanding filled. So that became my new career, basically. So I kind of fell into all of that, then realized the aspect of coaching that I really liked wasn't just the marketing side of things, but it was the visibility. It was helping entrepreneurs and coaches particularly to really stand out in market and to position themselves above their competitors. And one of the ways, obviously, to do that, there's a number of different ways. One of them, I get them on stages, get them on TEDx talks. I get them to get press about themselves and things like that. I help them to launch podcasts, get booked on other podcasts, all those kind of things. But one of those I realized was the same thing that helped me to position myself as a thought leader, which was being a published author. And what I realized is this perfect kind of, like convergence of all these things I was doing. One of the things I'd set up for my own books, because I knew if I was going to be publishing my own books, I would need a professional editor, professional copywriter, professional proofreader, professional designer, all these different things. So I hired a team. And then I realized this team is now my publishing company. So we set up ATG Publishing. And that's when the team and I were like, okay, well, if I'm coaching people, why don't I use them and use this opportunity to help a lot of my clients to become published authors? So that was the other part of the journey we went on. And I got to the end of last year, Rena, and I was reflecting on 2021. I always do my goals. And I said, right, okay, I've set my personal goals. I set my health goals, my family goals, all these kind of things. And then I really wanted to set some business goals. And so I set about with my financial ones, all those kind of things. But then I looked and I thought, what were the things that really lit me up in 2021? What were the things that really brought that smile to my face? And reflecting on the year, we had a lot of wins. A lot of my clients had some major breakthroughs. I had one of them double their revenue. I had another one that pivoted their whole business completely to find what they're really passionate about. I had others that had launched podcasts, others that had got booked on major stages and things. So it was this year of accomplishment, which was awesome. But the one thing that always stood out in my head was whenever I was having a Zoom call with a client and they had that physical book in their hand and they're going, I'm an author, and they're freaking out and that big cheesy grin on their face. And I'm like, that's the piece that I love. That's the piece that really lit me up in 2021. So that's when I set about, and I was telling Rena, that's when I set about putting a new goal in place for myself and going, okay, I want to help, instead of the 20 clients I helped last year become authors, this year I want to help 100 and with a stretch goal of an extra 100, so 200 entrepreneurs to become authors in 2022. So that's kind of how I fell into all these things. It really was, I want to say accidental, but it's not really accidental. It's being open to opportunity, being open to analyzing where you're at and finding out what you're really, really passionate about.
Wow, what a story. Thank you so much for sharing this. I guess my first question would be, I know not everything is smooth sailing when it comes to writing a book. So what are the biggest mistakes that you see people make when they think about even ideating a book, not even publishing, just ideating the book? So,
oh my goodness, yeah.
So talk to us a bit more about that. What have you seen people do, and what have you learned in your own process of writing a book, and what would you do better now?
Oh, wow. Okay, so one of the biggest myths is that it's hard. It's not hard, it's actually relatively easy, but it's not simple, if that makes sense. So in other words, anybody can write a book. And I genuinely do believe that everybody's got a book in them, mainly because everybody's got a story in them. Every single one of you, everyone watching this, everyone listening to this, you have a unique story that is going to resonate with a number of people. There are a whole pile of people out there that will genuinely connect with you, with your experiences, with your personality, with your scars, your battles, the things you've gone through, the things that you've learned, all of the things that make you you is going to deeply connect with some people. So by that basis, every single person has at least a book in them, probably more. So the biggest myth is that this is really hard and it's really overwhelming. So a lot of people don't do it. They get afraid and they don't bother sitting down and doing. Or the other aspect that kicks in is they think there are so many different rules around this kind of thing. In other words, when you're writing a book, it has to be in a specific kind of way. And when that was one of the biggest myths I realized early on, is that there are actually no rules. And a good example of this is one of my clients. She decided she was going to write her book. And I'm like, right, okay, I'm going to give her some help around this. So let's look at the structure of the book. So I usually give a bit of a framework to help them as a starting point to understand what it is they're trying to write. And she goes, no, I've got this, Vince. I've got this. Right. Here's what I'm doing. She got a giant whiteboard and she wrote 13 different images, like little icons down on the board. And they were just key moments in her life, or key lessons that she had learned along the way. And she goes, there you go. There's my 13 chapters. And I went, okay, well, let's look at the structure. No, I'm all good. And so she decided, here's what she would do: write 8 minutes every single day, right? No more than that, no less than that, 8 minutes every single day. And then she would just start with one of those chapters and write until she's finished it, then start on the next chapter and write until she's finished it. And then at the end, she got all the chapters, printed them all out, put them on a table, and then went, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, what order should I put these in? And if you talk to any editor, you talk to any publisher, you talk to anyone with experience in book publishing, they will freak out. They'll feel real anxious about that, because that's not how you have a consistent flow through a book. That's not how to structure a book based on our understanding of that. But what was interesting is she put this book together, did her eeny, meeny, miny, mo method, put the book out there, got it published, was an instant bestseller. It spoke directly to her target market. And it was very her, it was very her personality. It was very, like, she's very loud. In fact, the book's called Living Out Loud, but she's very loud and she's very gregarious and she's very full of life and everything. And every single chapter managed to capture that. So that's what taught me very early on, is there is no rules. And I found this writing my first book as well. Everyone will say to you, write the whole book first, write the whole draft, don't bother editing it, don't go back and reread any of your chapters, anything like that. Just start at the beginning and keep going until you get to the end. Then you can hand it off to an editor. Well, that doesn't work for me, because I had an incredibly busy life when I wrote my book, for multiple reasons. One, I was the chief marketing officer at Cigna, which was a very busy job. I had a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety that was happening with different projects that we were working on. But at the same time, I also went through a personal battle, which was one of my sisters, in fact, my only natural sister. Two of us are very, very close, but she was battling cancer at the time, and unfortunately lost her life before I managed to publish the book. But that meant that my life was a roller coaster ride as I was writing this. So what I discovered was I would write the first chapter, for example. I'd go back and reread, even though everyone said don't do that. I go back and reread that chapter, and I was quite happy with that chapter. It was full of my cheesy humor. It was full of my really bad jokes. It was full of examples from my personal life and my personal stories. But then I would get into writing the next chapter, and life would be more stressful. I've just had a really stressful call with my sister, trying to help her through the fear and the pain and everything that she was going through at the time. And then I had a real stress around a project that we're working on at work. So the next chapter had no humor in it. It was all data driven. It was all case studies. It was all, just examples that I'd found out there. It was very dry. So what I realized is, if I kept going like I was going, every single chapter of this book it's going to feel like it's from a different author. So I broke all the rules and said, I'm going to write a chapter, then I'm going to reread that chapter before I write the next one. So that way I'm in the same frame of mind. And I keep doing this. And every time I did that, by the way, I'd read a chapter and go, oh, there's a mistake, I'll fix that. Oh, there's another mistake, I'll fix that, which apparently you're not supposed to do. So the biggest myth I do want to crush is that, first of all, that you don't have a story, because every single one of you do. Every single one of you can write a book, or at least contribute to a book that's going to add to your thought leadership. And the second myth I really want to crush is that there are all these rules that you have to adhere to. No, you just have to tell your story in a way that feels comfortable with you, in a way that you're happy with, and that's going to resonate with those people that are just waiting to hear your story.
I love the sound of it. Actually, just about a few weeks ago, I finished my little first ebook that I use as an opt-in page, and I wrote it actually in a weekend. It took me like maybe 3 weeks to get it reviewed and edited, and it's still being edited again now, but I don't care. It's already published. People are downloading it, even though it's now with an editor. But I had so much fun writing it, and I didn't care about the rules. And I think that's what's so liberating because it's a creative process. And to me, creativity is breaking rules and knowing your audience, just like what you said, like with that lady, knowing your audience and then knowing how to speak to them and knowing in what way you resonate with them. I think that's probably how this whole book publishing business is changing, because everybody's a brand now. Everybody is a published author now. So what would be, which is great because I read those books and they're like just having a conversation with someone, and in a very, very informal way. And that's what I think people are after, unless it's some novel, or unless it's some book that is content driven. But for us coaches, it's an opportunity. It's our business card, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So
at what point in our coaching business journey, would you recommend anyone and everybody to start thinking about publishing a book?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I think when you get to the point that, so for any coach, any business, there are certain kind of milestones you need to hit. And one of those is you need to know that you have a product that is selling, and you need to have a process that can sell. If you're at that stage of your business where you know that you have something that is actually resonating with your audience and that you can actually sell it to people, that's when you can take your eyes off that slightly and look at other things. So that's usually at the point where you want to start scaling. So for example, a lot of businesses, if we just go down to the kind of marketing side of things, a lot of businesses will, they'll design a product, they'll design an offering, they'll design a program, and then they go, right, I need to get that in front of as many people as possible. So they start looking at paid advertising. Well, that's just flushing money down the toilet, because the reality is you need to know that your offer actually resonates with people and that you can sell it to people. And when you've got that and you've proven that that works, that's when you can go, now I'll throw money at it, and now I'll be able to scale that. Same principle applies with writing a book or stepping into any kind of thought leadership. When you have to increase your visibility, that's because you know that the more visible you are, the more people are going to buy your product. But to do that, they need to know that the product actually sells. So at that point, that's when I would say you need to set aside some time to be visible. So you need to set aside time for your Facebook Lives, for getting on podcasts, for getting on stages, for getting in the press, and of course, for writing your book as well. I love that. I finished just when Rena's taking a mouthful.
I'm trying to engage people on Facebook, and I'm trying to listen to you. Mohammed, did you have a question?
Yeah, first of all, let me start with greeting you from Egypt, all of you. And I'm really excited because we have 2 sessions today, which is great for me. I learn a lot from you. And thank you, Vince, for your input.
No problem.
Well, actually, before being a coach, I'm in the training, behavioral training and English language teaching. So through my journey, there are lots of like stations in my life. What really ignited me now from your speech is that you wrote the first chapter, and then when you started writing the next chapter, it had a different flavor. That's when you started to reread again the first and the second. Yeah. Well, isn't it better for you, first of all, to write there should be a flow of ideas that support your main objective of the writing, main objective of the book. That leads to the other question. Should I have, first of all, the objective of the book in my mind? What is it that I would like to transfer to the reader? Or I should think of the leader first before I think of the ideas or the objectives that I would like to tell. I'm sorry, I have the last question, if I'm writing a novel or a literary book, definitely the structure of the story will lead to, the plot of the story. But if you're writing a non-fictional book, I think it's totally different. For myself, I would love to buy a book or read a book when it has some insightful ideas, new ideas for me that I haven't learned before, and some tools that help me uh, adopt new skills in my life. I guess this is where I should start with in writing a book. Coming to the ground, should I think of the objective while writing? And accordingly, whatever I write should support these objectives, or I should think of my audience first. Thank you.
Good questions. Yeah, very good questions. And you're right when you say, about the chapters, writing them. One of the things I do is I start myself personally, I start with the structure of the book. So it wasn't me just sitting down going, I'm writing a chapter, and then I'll think about what the next chapter is. And then I'll think about, I actually had a kind of mental structure that I knew how it was going to flow. But the one thing I do recommend to people is, as a starting point, when you're looking, and we're specifically talking about nonfiction books here, we're talking about books for us as coaches. One of the things I start with is going, okay, at the end of this book, like before you've even kind of gone through working out your chapters, all those kind of things, at the end of this book, what do I want people to think? What do I want them to feel? And what do I want them to do? And I always start, in fact, anytime I'm writing copy, even just for a social media post, I start with those three things. What I want them to think, to feel, and to do. Because when you understand that, that is how you will write. So exactly what you're talking about, man. Like, it is, if you start from that perspective and you're starting from understanding your audience and going, what I want them to think, feel, and do. So for example, for my first book, it was all about experimentation with marketing. So I knew I had a methodology that was getting really good results. That's how I got the results at Cigna. That's how I got the results in my previous company. That's why we sold it for so much money. It was all this methodology that I had created. So I knew I had the methodology, but if I just started writing a book and said, here's a methodology, ta-da, that's going to mean nothing to anyone. So I started by going, what do I want them to think? First of all, I want them to think that, I think different about experimentation. I want them to think that there is a way that they can do incremental gains. So moving away from this, what we call silver bullet syndrome. So a lot of entrepreneurs, they'll follow Amy Porterfield, for example, and go, oh, Amy says that I need an online course. And if I have an online course, I'm going to be rich. So I will do that. Or then they go, Ryan Levesque, I need to create a quiz. If I can create a quiz, I'm going to suddenly have all the success that Ryan's had. So they all look for this silver bullet, this one thing that's going to make their business suddenly succeed. But what they're missing is actually it's incremental gains. It's all these little steps. So that's what I wanted people to think. I wanted them to think that they could actually do this in incremental steps. The thing I wanted them to feel was I wanted them to feel empowered. I wanted them to feel like they could actually adopt something like this. It's not just for senior marketers. It's not just for people with a huge amount of experience, that anybody can adopt this and do it themselves. And then the thing I wanted them to do was to actually start doing some practical experiments. So that helped me to structure the book. And my first book is structured in three kind of sections. The first section is the methodology. So that's what I want them to think. The second section is really the mindset that's required to be able to implement this. And through that, that's where I really wanted to empower them. So that's where I wanted them to feel like they could do this. And then the third part of the book, I thought, well, if I want them to do some practical experiments, why don't I include some practical experiments? So I got some experiments from myself, and I picked three other leaders in digital marketing from around the world, like one from, where did we have? We had one from the UK, one from the US, and another one from New Zealand. And they gave some practical examples as well. So if you always start from those three things, I think you can learn how to structure your book and go, okay, well, if I want them to think, feel, and do this, then these are the key things that are going to help me to get there. So these are the key topics I need to cover off around the thinking side of it. This are the key things I need to do around the feel. And throughout it, I need them to do something. So let's make it really practical for them.
So let's talk a bit about the book chapters. I know that you have your book publishing company now. And one of the projects that you're launching now or have been launching is actually contributing chapters to a book where different writers, I don't know how many words it is, but they basically write something up and there are different topics and such. So tell us a bit more about that and what's the difference and why would people do it this way?
Yeah, sure. Well, this is one of the things when I looked at my goal for my goal for this year, when I looked back on 2021 and said, okay, I want to help, 200 authors, 200 entrepreneurs become authors. When you write a goal like that down, that's when you can't suddenly come back to that goal and go, what are you doing, Vince? Like, seriously, are you a moron? There's no way you can help 200 people become authors, not the way I've been doing it, which is helping an entrepreneur write their book, publish their book, market their book. So if I was to do that, I wouldn't be able to scale it. So then I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to think different. So I looked at different book models and looked back over the clients that I haven't been able to help become an author. And for those, it's usually because they don't have the time or they don't have the energy or the money to be able to invest in that. So for a lot of my clients that aren't yet at that stage, they still want to become authors. They still want to leverage that thought leadership. And trust me, the things that you can leverage when being an author is incredible, but they don't have the time. So I thought, right, well, let's have a look at what models are out there. And I looked at a number of different things. I looked at low content books, and I've published some low content books before. I looked at repurposed books, and I'm working on a number of those at the moment. But then I looked at the collaboration book model, which is where you bring together 10 different authors to contribute to a book, or in some cases 20, but I wanted to do 10. So I looked at collaboration books and thought, is this a way I can use to scale the work that I'm doing and be able to help more people or more entrepreneurs, more coaches to become an author? So I looked at what models were out. I looked at the different models that are out there around collaboration books. There's some really great examples that have done very, very well. There's some really poor examples as well where they've done really, really poorly. So I thought, if I'm going to put something together, I want it to be the best in business. I'm very competitive. I'm like, I really want this to just kick butt, basically. So I looked at all the different models out there. I sat down with my publishing company and said, okay, guys, look, let's have a look at this. First of all, the average price to participate in a collaboration book, which is where you write one chapter. So instead of writing 50 to 60,000 words, you're writing 3,000 to 5,000 words. So if we can do this, if we can make this really easy for authors, what kind of pricing can we do? So the pricing out there was anything from $3,000 to $20,000 to participate in one of these books. There were some cheaper models out there. We can get it for around 1,000, but the quality of those was really, really low. So I said to my team, okay, well, if the starting point of the high quality ones is 3,000, can we half that? And they're like, no, of course we can't, Vince. And I said, why not? Well, let's have a look at how we can do this. So I challenged them to come up with a way that we could do this really, really well. And then they finally begrudgingly said, all right, then we give in. So we set the price at 1,500. But then I looked at what is the value for you as a coach, as an entrepreneur. And that was the starting point for how we structured this. So we looked at what worked really well in other packages. So for example, the fact that you can call yourself an author, that is really important. I mean, that's the whole goal of actually putting the book out there. It's not to make money from the book, by the way, because no one ever makes much money unless you're Tim Ferriss or J.K. Rowling or someone like that. You're not going to make much money off selling books, but you are going to make money in different ways. So we said, okay, the fact that you're an author, that's really important. Well, that's a big tick. We can easily do that. And then I said to my team, can we guarantee bestseller status? And they were like, of course you can't guarantee that, Vince. And I said, why not? They said, well, because that's really hard. And I went, well, let's see, what's our track record so far? Oh, it's 100%. So if we've got a 100% track record, why would we not guarantee this to people? And so then we looked at our methodology, and we've got some really, we've created some really advanced software that scrapes every aspect of Amazon, looks at every single category, looks at, I use predictive AI to actually tell you how many copies of a book you need to sell in a certain category over a certain time period to be able to hit that bestseller status. So I said, based on this and based on the types of books that we want to write here, can we guarantee that they'll be a bestseller? And then we realized, yes, we can. So that's a huge advantage that we can add to anyone who contributes to our books. So then I looked at what is the practical ways that we can add value to the entrepreneur or to the coach. And a lot of these books go, okay, well, I can give you a copy of the book afterwards, and then you need to purchase your own copies, at cost. But I thought, well, if you've put all this work into a book, we don't want you to just either have to pay for a copy of your book or get a free copy. We want you to get 10 copies. We want you to be able to give this to your family and friends at Christmas and go, here's your Christmas present. I'm an author. So we decided everyone that contributes to the book, they get 10 physical copies and they get 10 ebook copies of their book to be able to give away, to sell, to do whatever they want with. And then we looked at, well, what else will make it really important for them? Well, we don't want you to have to come up with all your social media assets and go, oh, I'm in a book and come up with all your copy and that. We want a suite of assets that we can give to every one of the co-authors in the book so that they can promote the fact that this book is out there. which is really promoting the fact that they're in the book. And then a second set of assets to go, guess what? I'm now a best-selling author. So we create all those for them. And then I thought, cool, that's all good. But where is the real value to you as a coach or as an entrepreneur? And like I said, the real value is not in the book sales itself. In fact, one of my best-selling books, I've probably only made around $15,000, maybe $20,000 tops from. And that's over just under 3-year period. So if I'm only making that much money over that amount of time, that's not a full-time income. That's nowhere near a full-time income. You're not going to make much money off the sale of these books. And now you're in a book with 9 other authors. So there's 10 of you that are contributing around a specific topic. So therefore, the amount of money you'll make is a lot less. So I thought, well, instead of that, why don't we give all the profits of the book sales to a charity or to a social good campaign? That way we don't have to worry. And selfishly, by the way, this just means I don't have to work out royalty splits for all of you. So we made it really, really easy for us. But we can gift that to somebody who's really going to treasure that money and treasure what we're doing there. But then the real value to you as an entrepreneur is in what you do with the book next. And this is the bit that most people miss. A lot of people become a co-author in one of these books. It's great. And they become, in some cases, they become best-selling authors as well, which is awesome. But then they just go, right, well, now I'm an author. I'm a best-selling author. What now? So what we do is 1 month after the publication date, we give you the ebook files. We'll give you the PDF, the Mobi, the EPUB file. So there's like the Kindle version, the Kobe version, that kind of thing. We give those to you with a strategy on how to actually make leads and make money from those. So we teach you how to use it as a lead magnet, as a giveaway, as an upsell, as a value add, as a cross-sell, all of these different kind of things. And there are so many ways you can leverage this book. In fact, one of the things with my first book ever, someone said to me, and this was one of the reasons I wanted to become an author, they said, you'll be surprised with how many doors the book will open for you. Like this, the fact that you're an author will open a lot of doors. And I went, okay, well, yeah, I can kind of understand that. I put the book out there. One of the things I didn't realize would happen very, very quickly is I used to charge around $3,000 to $5,000 to do a keynote speech around the world. So if someone wanted me to speak at their conference, I would charge them about $3,000 to $5,000, depending on how big the conference was. The moment I became a published author, that value went up to $20,000. I would get offers. In fact, the main reason it happened too was as soon as I published the book, obviously it hit the headlines around the world. And then I had 3 different conferences all trying to bid to get me to speak at theirs, which were all on in the same week. So I could only do one of them. So then went up to $20,000 and that became my new rate. But then I got to near the end of 2019. And unfortunately, this never went ahead because damn COVID kind of hit the world. But in 2020, I was supposed to be speaking at a conference in San Francisco where they said to me, look, Vince, we'll be honest with you. We can't afford your rates to get you as a keynote here. But we've got 5,000 people that are going to be attending this conference. And we have all this budget set aside to be able to add value to them. So why don't we buy 5,000 copies of your book? We will, we'll pay you $5,000 a speaking fee, but then we'll buy 5,000 copies of your book and you can do a book signing there and sit there. And I'm going, hang on. So quick mental calculation. I'm getting $5,000 plus the profits from 5,000 copies. I'm actually making more money than I normally would. And you're going to sit me in front of your 5,000 audience, your 5,000 attendees, where I'm now engaging with each of them as I sign the book. For my brand, that is huge. So there's so many different ways that you can kind of bring this to life. And you can use it as a freebie, as a lead magnet, so that you can, like you're doing, Rena, where you can get people in and get their contact details and be able to bring them into your environment, into your kind of community. Now, I just saw the comment from Heffy there around what makes a best-selling book. I'm taking it you mean what makes a book a bestseller, or is it what makes a book so good that it becomes a bestseller? But if it's what makes it a bestseller, it's just that it sells a certain amount of copies within a 2-hour period on Amazon. So there's multiple different types of bestsellers. There's Amazon bestseller, then there's New York Times bestseller and those kind of things. With New York Times, they're very hard to get on those lists because they're more about the publishing company that you've gone through rather than the actual book itself in a lot of cases. In fact, they are quite open in saying that it's not about book sales, it's actually about the reputation and all these kind of things. The number of copies within 2 hours. So that is basically if you, for example, in some categories, there is very low competition. So you might find a category. In fact, one of my clients just had the absolute dream. We were using my software to scan and we're looking for the best categories to put them in. And we found a brand new category. Like Amazon just released like 5 different new categories, and one of them was perfect for their book. So all they had to do, I'm not joking, was sell a copy of their book within 2 hours. And if they were the most amount sold in that 2 hours in that category, they hit that bestseller tag, which is exactly what happened to them. In fact, they sold, I think, 10 copies and became a bestseller. That's very rare. Usually it's around 50 to 100 copies, something around that, where that you hit that bestseller tag. But you just have to sell a certain amount within that 2-hour period. Cool. Right, let's see. The title of the book that explains how to leverage the book.
Can I elaborate more on my
Sure,
question?
go for it.
Well, actually, this was not my perspective on what makes a best-selling book, the number of sold copies. What I meant, the content itself.
Gotcha.
What makes you as a publisher say from first sight, first reading the first chapter, wow, this book would make a best-selling book?
There's a couple of things in that. The first is that it really does understand the audience. So there's 2 sides to this. First of all, you have to write a book that connects with your audience. You've got to write one that is adding value to them. So your audience has to see that and go, I need this book because that is going to add value to me and my journey. Because let's face it, everybody is selfish, but not in a bad way. But every single one of your prospective clients or every single person that's going to buy your book is looking for how they can progress their career, their business, or themselves. So if you're adding to that and you're helping them to achieve that, then they're going to want to buy your book. Now, the second aspect to that, though, has nothing to do with your book and more to do with the fact that they need to know about your book, because you could write the best book in the world, but if no one hears about it, no one's going to be able to buy it. So that comes down to a number of different strategies. So this comes down to a really good marketing campaign. It comes down to leveraging reviews. It comes down to setting up a really good launch as well. Like the launch of your book is really, really critical, because if you create that mass amount of momentum in a short period of time, that's when people like Amazon go, oh, hang on a minute, I should pay attention to this book. Obviously, everyone wants to read this. So they put it on their recommendation list, or they put it on their bestseller list, or they put it on their new and noteworthy kind of lists and things as well. So you get in front of more eyeballs. But the other thing is how you're even capturing details of people to let them know about the book. So in other words, don't just send them to Amazon, but send them to a landing page where they fill in their details and then suddenly they're on Amazon afterwards. So that way you've captured their details. If they don't buy your book, you can kind of remarket to them. You can let them know about it and kind of drive that kind of behavior, getting them to actually buy the book itself. Cool.
So I have several questions there, kind of like taking a step back. So what would you personally recommend, writing your own book or writing chapters for a book? What is better for the brand?
Better for the brand is always writing your own book, because that, if you think about it from your client's perspective, they'll be looking at this going, okay, you've taken the time, you've put all that effort into taking what's inside your head, your methodologies, your knowledge, your experience, all the things that you teach. You've taken the time to take that out of your head and put that down on paper, which to them means a lot. And that's why it seems really weird when you say that becoming an author opens a lot of doors, because you're like, well, what makes being an author so special? Well, exactly that. The fact that you have taken the time to put that down on paper means that what you have to say must be important enough for you to make that kind of effort. However, the thing is, it's not as accessible to everybody. Writing a full solo book, we call them, but writing the solo book is not as accessible to people. So a good starting point for you to leverage the thought leadership without having to spend, a year or so writing this book is to do a collaboration book. And it's very easy. In fact, we're working on a number of ones at the moment with the collaboration books. And the goal is obviously each contributor writes 3,000 to 5,000 words. So I thought, right, that's something that anyone could do within a month period, could easily do that. And we've got developmental editors, which will help you to, read it and make sure it makes sense and then come back to you with advice and things like that. But I had a woman wanting to be in one of the books. In fact, it's one of the books we've got to market at the moment. And she jumped on a call with me and she goes, look, before we get started, Vince, I need to let you know I've already written my chapter. And I was like, I was thinking, that's not how this works. You know, we've got to approve you to be in the book first and all this kind of thing. So I was going to tell her that, but she turned around, she goes, that's how much I want to be in this book. I will be in this book and I'll fight you if you don't let me in this book. I've already written my chapter. And I realized she wrote 5,000 words in one day. That was how passionate she was about it. And by the way, she sent me the copy. Really good writing. I was really impressed with this. She was so passionate about her topic. So for a lot of entrepreneurs, that starting point can be those collaboration books where you still leverage the thought leadership. You can still use this to generate leads and generate revenue, but at the same time, you don't have to commit to that year-long journey or half a year-long journey to be able to write, 50 to 60,000 words.
We do have one question that I find quite interesting as well, is that not everybody has like technical expertise that they sell to the coaching clients. A lot of coaches, they're actually kind of like the inner game coaches, and they work with people on the emotional level, whatever it is that people struggle with. What advice would you have for those people? How do they go about actually writing about something that's very, very personal, perhaps to their clients and to themselves?
Yeah. One of the most powerful ways, in fact, this is what I encourage to everybody, whether you're in collaboration books or whether I'm helping you to publish your solo book or even low content books for that matter, is the thing that makes books work really, really well is your personal stories. And I've seen many different ways of writing out there. I'm a big fan of Jonah Berger. He wrote the book Contagious. He's got a new book out at the moment, which I've completely gone blank on the title. But I'm a big fan of his books. He's an incredible writer, but he only writes using case studies. So he does research. He's a researcher. He works for, I think he's at Wharton Business School. But he just, goes out there and researches case studies and puts them in the book. And that's good. And it's fine. But then you read Seth Godin's books, and Seth Godin, I've had the opportunity to meet him a number of times. He's one of my heroes in the marketing industry. Every single one of his books has personal stories in there, and they talk to me. Because what happens, and this is the interesting thing if you understand about storytelling, when you're telling a story to somebody else. So say, for example, I'm telling you about, when I published my first book and the spiral of imposter syndrome that happened afterwards, and I'm explaining this to you. What scientists have discovered is when I'm telling the story, certain neurons are firing in my brain. But if they map the person that's hearing the story, the same neurons are firing, which means there's this neural coupling that happens between you and the person that's listening to the story, which means they go on that journey with you. That's really powerful. That helps them to remember anything that's in your book. It helps them to digest what's in the book, to make sense of what's in the book. And the fact that it's personal stories means you're showing vulnerability. And if you understand how our brains make decisions, like there's three kind of core parts of our brain. There's the three core parts that are involved in decision making. There is the neocortex, which is the logical part of the brain. So that's all the benefits, the features, all those kind of things that we sell to people. There's the limbic system, which is the emotional core of our brain. That is where, when we're telling the stories, that's where it really lights up, that limbic system. And that's, believe it or not, that's where most decisions are actually made. But then there's another part of our brain that's involved in this, which is the reptilian part of our brain. And that is the part of the brain that's defensive, that's looking for a reason not to make a decision to work with you or not to make a decision, to buy your book or any of those kind of things. And to remove the reptilian part of the brain from the equation, one of the most effective ways to do that is to show vulnerability. Because the moment you share a personal story or something that, they feel like they're really privileged to be able to read or to be able to understand, then the reptilian brain goes, oh, hang on a minute, this must be a safe space because you're sharing something that's vulnerable. So therefore, I don't need to be defensive. I'm going to go in the corner over there, have a cup of coffee, sit in fetal position, whatever your reptilian part of your brain wants to do. It doesn't need to be involved. So that's what I would recommend. If you're trying to do something that's a bit more abstract, or you're trying to help people with something that is emotional, that is very personal for them or very individual, then speak through your own stories and your own kind of background and things as well, because that will resonate with people. And then you're also speaking from a point of the breakthrough that you got, the learnings that you had through this process as well, because they will learn from your story and your process, and they will understand that you're the right person to help them through their process as well.
I think one of the things that helped me write my little ebook in just one weekend was actually going on so many podcasts and having my own podcast and repeating my story over and over again. And in the beginning, I was very shy about my personal story. So I thought, okay, I'm just gonna, dump the facts. But then as I kept speaking and reiterating and different aspects of my story, I was able to be much more comfortable sharing. And after having repeated the same story 20 times, the book was there. All the information was there. So those of you who are kind of like struggling with putting the ideas together, try sharing as much as you can about your story, about your process, about your thinking with as many people as you can. And it doesn't have to be in a podcast. If you feel, okay, I might be sharing something that might be inappropriate, then just find some friends, invite them for a brainstorming session and start just kind of like throwing ideas out there and just hear yourself talk.
Yeah.
Say your book out loud. And the more you do it, then the more it's just there. And you just sit down. I said it already so many times.
Yeah.
So
that's an awesome hack, Rena. It kind of aligns with something I did with my first book as well. One of the things I realized with my first book was I would get stuck when I'm writing. So I'd start writing and then I'm like, oh, but wait, this idea or that idea or this idea. And I had a structure. I wrote down like bullet points of what I wanted to cover in that chapter. So one of the things I started doing was I used a software called Otter.ai, which is an auto transcription software. So I just loaded it up on my phone, I put my headset in, and I walk around the room and I would just speak. I would pretend that I'm talking to another individual, and I would just tell them about what I want to cover off in the book. And I'd tell them about all the different stories and I'd start articulating them. Now, it would transcribe all of that. I actually wouldn't use that transcription. I didn't personally use that for my book at all, but I used it as a way to kind of structure the way I was thinking. And that way, when I'm going through writing the chapter, if I got stuck, I could go back to the transcription and go, oh, that's right, I used that wording and that was really good. Oh man, I'm going to totally steal that. I sounded quite intelligent when I said that. So actually just even walking around the room, pretending to talk to people, telling your story is really important. But there's also another aspect to writing, which people don't really think about. So I always knew going into writing my first book that it would leverage thought leadership. I knew it would elevate me in thought leadership. I knew also it would make me some money because I knew that a lot of people would want to buy my book. And then the other thing I knew was it was going to open all the different doors for me. The thing I didn't realize is that the process of writing a book is incredibly cathartic for us, because as a coach particularly, or for you guys that are coaches, it helps you to articulate your thinking when you have to put it down on paper in a way that people understand, which means when you're now teaching other people, you're going to find it so much easier and so much clearer to be able to teach them because you've literally just put this down and had to rewrite it. So really, really powerful way.
Totally. I run my own little podcast every Friday, and I think about the different aspects, different chapters. Almost every episode is like a different chapter, and I see what's in me that I could share with the community. And often when I sometimes design slides around it, but actually when I speak and when I have audience, more ideas flow that I kind of like didn't think about, and people ask me questions, and then there are this additional things that are coming up. And I think it's a beautiful process of doing it. It just kind of like it's almost like seeing your baby being born, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
I know we don't have so much time left, so I just wanted to ask you a few more things. And my next question would be, let's say people, I mean, writing that book, I feel like is what people love doing. But then people struggle with marketing when it comes to their own coaching business, and then promoting and marketing a book. It's kind of like entering a completely different industry and figuring how things are run there. So that's what I think is holding me back more than anything. It's like I want it to be a success. I know I can write the book. It's not an issue, but do I have the time? Do you have the money? Do you have the patience? Do you have the marketing know-how? Do you understand the industry to actually make it in that industry so that my book flies and doesn't crash land?
Yeah, I think the thing to think about is always start from what are your objectives and what are your goals. And by that, I mean, if your objective is to sell a lot of copies of your book to make money off the book, then that's going to require a very solid marketing strategy. That's going to require a lot of effort on your part and probably a lot of money as well to be able to invest into that. But if your goal is to be a bestseller and your goal is to now leverage that for your business, that is a very different proposition. Because hitting that bestseller tag, as I said, is not that hard. It's not that difficult. If you've got a company like ours behind you, then you don't really need to do anything. You just need to participate in one of those books and we'll make sure you hit that status. But then you get to use your book for your business. And that's the big difference, is you're not marketing your business and marketing your book. You're using your book to market your business. And you do this through using it as a giveaway or using it as a lead magnet. And actually saying to people, I'd love to give you a free copy, a free PDF version of my book. Just leave your details here. And then they go onto your mailing list. Or even better, one of the clever ones that Russell Brunson always leverages, and in most people's mind, they don't even realize what's happening. He goes, I want to give you a free physical copy of my latest book. And people go, oh, everyone loves it. I've got bookcases, like the bookcase behind me, but I've got bookcases in other rooms full of books that I've never read, but I've got them because it's a free book. And we love getting free books. It feels really, really special. But all you have to do to get that free book is really simple. You have to pay your $10 shipping. But of course, $10 shipping, when you're thinking about Amazon, is actually the cost of shipping plus the cost of printing the book, plus a little bit extra. He's actually making money on every single one of those books. So you think you're getting a free copy of the book, you're just getting a very discounted version of the book as well. So that's a way. But what happens then, of course, you get that book, and now there's an upsell on that. There's a, hey, by the way, here's the book. But now that you've bought the book, don't stop there. Here's the next step, which is to actually buy my program, or to buy a small course on how to actually use that book. Or it goes into your email system, where it can now sell you on new products and new offerings and new services that you're putting out there for your clients. So instead of thinking about marketing the book, it's using the book to market your company. So it's using it as an asset, as a marketing tool, as a lead magnet, those kind of things. So very different kind of proposition.
We have a question here on Facebook, and the question is, what's the title of your book that explains how to leverage books?
I don't actually have a book on how to leverage books, although that's a very cool concept. I don't have a book on how to do that. That is something that's included in our collaboration books. So what we do is, for each of the co-authors that contribute to the book, when we give them the files, we also give them this document. So it's not actually a book, it's a document that shows them different ways that they can utilize that book to make money and to generate leads. We haven't put that out there as a book just yet, because that's part of our secret sauce. And it's also, a part of our value add for anyone that contributes to our books themselves.
Oh my gosh. I'm back. Where am I? I'm just trying. I guess the next question is, how can people connect with you?
Yeah, nice.
I was trying to get the links out.
I love it.
I'll put them under the video as well, but I got them here. So yeah, tell us, how can people...
Oh, well, I make it really easy for you. I know there's a whole pile of links there on Zoom, and probably they'll be on Facebook as well. But the easiest way is just go to chasingtheinsights.com. So that's the home of my podcast. It's also the home of my books. It's also the home of two really important links you're going to see on the website. One of them is book a free strategy call. So if any of you are unsure about any of these things, just book in some time with me. It's free. There's no obligation, and we can have a chat. But you're also going to see a link there, which I know the link's also in Zoom here. The link to the best-selling author. So on the website, you'll see Become an Author. Click on that link. You'll see the books that we have in market at the moment that we're finding authors for. So there are 4 of those. There's one called Screw the Hustle, which is an anti-hustle and grind culture book. So in other words, it's building a business that's not just being a slave to your business. The other book is The Heart-Centered Entrepreneur. So this one's very popular. We've only got like 1 or 2 slots left in this book. So essentially, that's a book about building a business that comes from your heart, or building a business that connects directly to the heart of your customers. Then there is Love Your Marketing. So this is for all the marketers. So this is about marketing your business in a really authentic way without feeling like a sellout. And then lastly, there is Your Brand, Your Voice, which is stories from entrepreneurs about how they learned to find their voice in a really, really crowded market. So if you want to participate in one of those, you want any information on that, that should all be on that page. And you pre-register on there. So you basically go through and register your interest on one or more of those books. We will then tee up a call with you, sit down with you, make sure that you're a good fit for the book and the book's a good fit for you. We're never going to sell you anything that's not going to fit you or not going to add value to you. But also we want to make sure the quality of these books is really high. We've got some pretty high profile entrepreneurs in some of them. So we want to make sure that, the quality across all of those authors is consistent. So yeah, that's the best way to get a hold of me. You'll also find links, by the way, on the website to everywhere to connect with me on social. Just do it. Just connect with me on every social platform. Unless you're a spammer, please don't connect with me if you're a spammer. But if you're not, then feel free to reach out to me. I love meeting new people.
Excellent. Any final closing remarks? I don't see any new questions. I think we got them all.
I think the final remark, I'll just want to reiterate something I said at the beginning, which is that the thought, and I still remember when I first thought I'm going to write a book, it was really overwhelming. It really was, because there's two aspects to the overwhelming. There is the, oh my goodness, this is going to be such a huge undertaking. There's so many words that I need to write. I've never written a book before. It's going to come across really amateur. You get in your own head, imposter syndrome screams at you. You suddenly think, who am I to write a book? What makes me think I'm anything special? No one's going to want to read it, all those kind of things. And then the other overwhelm aspect is the publishing process. Now, putting a book on Amazon is not that difficult, but making it succeed on Amazon is very difficult. And that's where you need people that have the expertise and the experience. So all of this is really overwhelming, and it can cause you to do what most people do, which is not even start or not write a book at all. But I will tell you this, it's not as overwhelming as you think. If you have good people in your corner, and these are people that can guide you, that can encourage you, that can help you with this, then it's actually really easy to become an author. And I genuinely do think, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, that every single one of you has a story in you that needs to be told. Every single one of you has something that's going to relate to a whole pile of people that's going to get them genuine breakthrough in whatever you're doing with your coaching or whatever you're doing with your business.
I guess the last question is, it's just me, the geek, asking, what's with all the toys in the background? I love Star Wars. I love science fiction. So tell us, what's the story behind that?
Oh my goodness. Well, okay. First of all, for years, I used to hide from who I was. So I have ADHD, and with ADHD comes a thing called RSD, which is rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So that means you really worry, you feel like you've always got to please other people. You always feel like you've got to try and fit in with everybody else. But I was trying to fit in a world that wasn't me. And I am a giant geek. I love comics. I love Star Wars. I love whiskey. You'll see a lot of whiskey bottles in the background there as well. And I used to hide from who I was. I remember people telling me, don't read comic books. You're an adult. No adults read comic books. They're for kids, and they're for kids that aren't that bright. And I hid from who I am. It wasn't until I realized one day, in fact, I was having a bit of a pity party, because I grew up in a really abusive household. I grew up in in poverty and a really just horrible environment. And I remember having a pity party to one of my friends one day, and I said to him, it's not fair, man. All these people, they grew up in this environment where they were encouraged, where they were told you didn't have to read comic books, or they were told how to build a business, or they were told how to make money and all these kind of things. I didn't have any of that. I had no role models in my life. I had none of that. And I think he was getting really annoyed that I was being such a sad sack. So he turned around and he just said, look, you do realize that everything you've been through counts for something. And I was a bit confused, and he explained, he said, look, the fact that you've gone through all these things, the good, the bad, the ugly, every struggle you've gone through, Vince, everything that humans should have to go through, that you've had to go through because you're the family, that all of that has made you who you are now. And who you are now is actually someone really special. And that's what made me realize I actually quite like who I am. I'm an empathetic person. I'm someone who deeply cares about other people. I'm someone who finds fulfillment in helping others. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. So I started to realize I should embrace who I am. And that's when I decided I'm going to double down on the geek. I don't care. This is my happy place. This office is my happy place. I've actually, this is only a small part of all the toys and Star Wars memorabilia and that there's a whole pile in the other room, and then my wife's just looking at it going, good grief. But I just had to embrace who I was. And the more I found I did that, the more I found I connected with so many other people. And we now live in the age of the geek anyway. I mean, every TV show, every movie out there is Star Wars and Marvel, and even some of the good DC stuff that's coming out now. And I'm in heaven. It is just such a good time to be alive.
I couldn't agree more with you. I'm also such a geek. I wish I had such a collection like you do, but I'm a traveler, so everything I own fits in a suitcase.
One thing I do, Irina, is for my students, once a week, I will change around some of the things in the background to see if any of them notice. Mostly when I say to them, okay, what's changed in the background, they say, oh, the whiskey bottles have got a lot less whiskey in now. I'm like, oh, that's not fair. But I try and get them to see if they can actually tell the difference.
So I look forward to my podcast with you next week. I'm sure we're going to geek out a lot. So thank you so much. I don't see any more questions. People saying good stuff. They really liked the conversation, and
Awesome.
we will be ending it here. We are gonna go live again in 4 hours. There's gonna be another incredible podcast. Actually, it's gonna be more of our workshop, and we have someone from your part of the world as well. I think she's from Australia or New Zealand. I forgot. Maybe New Zealand. So we have more New Zealand people maybe coming up, and expert on copywriting, and she's going to teach us incredible things. I saw some of her replays of her trainings, so we have somebody really incredible today with us. So join us, and that's it. Thank you so much, Vince, for being here.